Speaking of Hollywood in the 70s and weird things, here's a podcast recommend. There's an Australian podcast called Fatal Voyage. It's a re-examination of Natalie Wood's death. I guess it was technically reopened or something. Because the captain that was on the boat. For those of you who don't know Natalie Wood, she was a
West Side Story,
incredibly famous actor. She married for a second time Robert Wagner, who's still alive. He was in this show called Heart to Heart, but before that he was a movie star. They had then Natalie Wood was in a movie called Brainstorm with Christopher Walken. For some reason, this is the part that really confuses Schraub a lot more than it does me, because I've always equated Christopher Walken with you.
Why?
And I imagine coming off of The Deer Hunter and having an Oscar, Schraub just can't get his mind around it. It's like, why? Who invites Christopher Walken alone onto a boat to Catalina and just and I'm like, doesn't it seem like something Jeff would just be like, hey, Natalie Wood, are you got? I'm gonna go. Anything you want me to ask her? And that you wouldn't bring a date.
Is that how I sound? Hey, boo boo. Why am I Yogi Bear?
What am I, Rich Little? I had to make you sound different from me.
Okay.
But anyways, for those who are totally unindoctrinated to this sort of like legendary kind of Hollywood Babylon thing, when Natalie Wood drowned that weekend, and it was like there were 4 people on the boat, including the captain, and one of them ended up dead, and there was never it was never really regarded as a homicide, and so all this time it's always just been this thing of like something fucked up went on that boat, and there was always I always thought it was very silly and kind of provincial of people to go, well, the 2 automatic courses are like, obviously it's like, he was a jealous kind of husband. He had a jealousy streak. He once followed Warren Beatty home with a gun because she was in a movie with him. And he was like, he's capable of going there and jealousy. So obviously that's
which
the first place.
Which is a big predictor for like serious male violence and murder.
It's obviously the first place you'd go in a regular death, as you look at the husband first,
right.
Let alone if he's the only one capable of being near you, and there's a history there.
And there's 4 people on the boat. So there's the captain, Christopher Walken, the guy, and the girl.
Right.
Okay.
And I always thought, and so that always makes sense to me, but I always thought it was like a very kind of Midwestern looking at Hollywood thing that people would go, you know, what really happened is Robert Wagner was fucking Christopher Walken. Natalie Wood walked in and she was like, that's it. And they clubbed her to death and threw her in the water. I'm like, come on. Like, why do we just, because that's the only other scenario that you can imagine. And it's like, oh, Hollywood's bisexual and all this stuff. But and then I'm going to turn this podcast over to you, so I don't want to spoil everything. But it does turn out that Robert Wagner, that he was married to Natalie Wood twice. And the reason they got divorced the first time is because she caught him in an affair with a man.
Oh, really?
And so that doesn't automatically mean you're going to fuck Christopher Walken, as I'm connecting those dots. But I was surprised to find that out. It was like, holy shit. But so if we were going to continue to talk about it, I'd tell you.
What was the podcast?
It's called Fatal Voyage. It's just like one of those like one-off kind of mini series.
Hell yeah, that sounds awesome.
Things.
You know what I think?
There's another one called the RFK tapes, I think. These are all Cody finds these, and we sleep to podcasts. But I think it's called the RFK tapes. RFK something. It's a re-examination of the assassination of Robert Kennedy by this like weird guy, Sirhan, and a really fascinating, like intimate examination of a really nice, smart, cool guy who is absolutely convinced that this is an elaborate conspiracy, and he doesn't have tinfoil on his head, and he's not defensive. He doesn't start throwing things if you say you think he's full of shit. So it's like very, and yet what he's what he believes is the case is so, hard to believe, but it's fun. It's fun to listen to for a couple episodes. I mean, the couple being its totality. I don't mean it takes a shit in the middle. Yeah, I like to come to Harmontown and get my recommendations for other podcasts.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to Heavyweight ever on Gimlet,
I go to Trader Joe's to get coupons to Ralph's. And,
our friend Rob Corddry was on this show. It's a good entry point if you don't have any other. But there's this show called Heavyweight. It's God, now I can't remember the guy's name, John Goldstein, something like that. But it's a network, Gimlet Media. He's this guy who just like gets up in other people's business. So if you have I think it's called Heavyweight because if it usually deals with shit that's like weighed on people for a while and it's been unresolved, and then he'll just like people come to him and say, I haven't spoken to my aunt in 30 years, and I'm convinced it's because she thinks I'm racist or whatever. We had an argument over pretzels at the lake house or whatever, and I just can't talk to her. And I get these mixed signals and all this stuff, and then he'll just call her, and like he just kind of like realized at some point in his life that the only thing he was good at was
resolving stuff.
Well, getting his nose in everybody's business. Yeah,
does he fix shit or he?
He very much does. Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, he would be a horrible person.
Yeah. sounds like a Red Dead Redemption character.
He's got a very high resolution rate. Even when sometimes it turns out that the person that thought that their issue was with someone else, it turns out that they needed to confront something about themselves, and he'll successfully get that.
All right.